Oh hi, this is Veitsknight and welcome to I Tried. On this episode, I tried Warriors of Waterdeep on Android. This game is made by a company called Ludia. If you've heard of that name before, that's because they're the ones who did the Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park Alive games on mobile. That's where they're more famous at. So Warriors of Waterdeep, if you haven't caught it by the name itself, is actually a game based on the popular role-playing game called Dungeons and Dragons. It's set in Waterdeep, which is a famous place in the Forgotten Realms. If those words mean nothing to you, pay no mind. Basically, it's a fantasy city, and most of it is set in a tavern. Something's happening in the city, and someone needs to sort it out. You are tasked in hiring adventurers. So you start off with an elf cleric and a human wizard, and they go exploring in the dungeons. You do get a chance to expand your party as the story progresses. I currently have a dwarf rogue and a half-orc barbarian. As I'm naming out all these classes and races, you might have caught wind that there is no character creation, which is very weird for a Dungeons and Dragons game, because that is the core essence of what D&D is. It's you creating a character and putting them out on an adventure. A lot of fun people have in Dungeons and Dragons is actually creating the characters. You don't get that here, but the characters they do have are fleshed out and then stats perfectly to their respective role. So if you go into the menu, click on the information icon, you'll see the race, the class, on their background, you can read on that, and then their specific attributes, which is strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You don't need to think much on that. That is just for flavor, especially for those who are wanting a more authentic D&D experience. If you do not know what those are, it's fine. Just play the game, have fun. Now, the adventures itself are dungeons with a set number of encounters. It's almost always going to be the same 4 rows. You start at the very first, and then the enemies are almost always at the very last. Each encounter, you get to do one of 4 things. It's move, attack, and use one of your 2 skills. The interesting thing I find about this game is that sometimes there is bonus actions. For instance, when the cleric moves, he has a slight chance to heal one of the party members. So with him moving, it's not that big of a waste. Looking at the screen right now, you're gonna see damages that go above 100. This was very weird to me because D&D, especially at the lower levels like 1, 2, you don't deal a lot of damage. You rarely ever hit 100. Hitting 12 was a miracle, especially for someone like a cleric who normally does not do any actual combat. So this is a very weird design choice for me, because regardless of the total number, there's still a total number of hits that need to land. Let's say the enemy has 200. It takes a couple of shots before he falls down. Why not make it more authentic to D&D and have it at 20? And scroll the damage back as well. So this is not the only thing that's very weird for me in combat. Your characters rarely miss, which is honestly a good thing. But the only time they do miss is when they roll a 1. By that I mean attacks in Dungeons and Dragons are determined by a 20-sided die. You have a difficulty which is almost average at 15, so you need to roll a 15 or higher to hit. Sometimes lower depending on the difficulty, but that's a general gist of it. With this game, you only miss if you roll a 1, which is okay, I guess it's easier, but 1 normally means something really bad happened. Like, if you're a ranger with a bow, your bow snapped. You had to change weapon, you had to spend a turn fixing your bow, all this stuff. That adds a level of tension to the game, which this does not have. Speaking of tension, dying does not really do anything. I mean, there's no negative effect. They do get locked out of experience, but that's the experience per encounter, not dungeon. So like I said, the dungeons have a set number of encounters, so for a dungeon that has 3 encounters and you lose your barbarian on the 3rd encounter, he does get the XP for the first 2. Death was something you really needed to avoid in D&D, and they're not even treating it as an obstacle. Locking them out for a set amount of time would force you to utilize the other characters that you have and be more familiar with the roles and all that stuff. That might have been a better way to approach death. So far that's the only major thing that I am not happy about with the game. Leveling up in this game is interesting because after each encounter you do get a set number of XPs, like you get 2, 3, maybe 4, and then you find another group of enemies and then get another XP for that. You might get a total of 6, a minimum of 6 per dungeon. But you will see that that might not be enough to level up in a short amount of time. But luckily, they did add a way to speed things up. You can level up by upgrading your gear. Now, your gear also ties to your 4 actions. So, changing your weapon changes the type of attack you do and the type of skill that comes along with it. And changing accessories changes your skill. This allows for some variety between characters, especially same characters. This is highlighted more when you get into PvP. Now, PvP, you get to bring 4 of your adventurers along and fight 4 of the other people. Every win, you get a chest which contains gold items which can help you level up your current equipment. But once you have those chests, you have to wait for them to unlock. I really like going into PvP because it does one thing that all Dungeons and Dragons players know. It makes you roll for initiative. So initiative, for those who don't know, is deciding who goes first. You're gonna roll your 20-sided die, or the D20, and the highest number goes first. I would have preferred if it was per character, but they did it per player, which is fine for the most part. So once you're into PvP, you fight against the characters of other people, and if you do win, you do get a chest containing which contains items, money, things that could help you better level up your character. Now, this chest won't open immediately. There is a set timer to it. So the basic chest only opens after 3 hours. You have to tap on a chest, say unlock, and then you'll have to wait 3 hours for it to open. And then the more hours it takes to open the chest, the more the better the loot the chest contains. So I currently have one that will open in 8 hours, but I've already but you can only queue one for opening at a given time. Given that PvP does give you a lot of equipment and ways to better your characters very fast, I do love that there is this gating mechanic. And speaking of gating mechanic, this game does not shove microtransactions. There is, and I stumbled upon it a couple of times by accident, but the game is not asking you to do so. The amount of loot that they give you quite early on, and even throughout, even if you've already played for a bit, is justified. It feels like you're getting enough rare items, enough epic items, enough legendary items that you don't feel like you only get to be better if you do pay. So, so it is an option for you, but honestly, it's so balanced right now, and the way the system does loot that you might not even consider it if you're like if you're very frugal like me. So that's it. That's Warriors of Waterdeep. It's currently free on Android and iOS. The links are in the description. If you enjoyed what I've just said, please check it out. Bye.